Hello again everybody, and something a little bit different today in my series of mini lectures. So I'm turning away from historical narrative, turning away from individuals, and this time I'm going to do first off a few about birds. And the first bird I'm going to talk about is the eagle, not surprisingly, the king of the birds. Now, in Rome's history, the eagle first comes to prominence in the story of Romulus and Remus. There was a dispute over who was going to be king, and indeed over which of the hills they were going to build their new city on. And so they both claimed divine inspiration because they had received messages by the sign of birds. Romulus claimed that he'd seen 12 eagles which had appeared from Jupiter, and Remus said that he'd seen 6 eagles, but his had appeared much earlier, and so it should be his choice. And this was actually at the root of the problem, which ended up with one of them killing the other. And so Romulus killed Remus, and thus Rome was called Rome and not Reme. But it's interesting that eagles were right in there at the very start of Rome. And maybe that's why the eagle has such a part to play in the iconography of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire subsequently after that. The eagle had always been a symbol of power and authority, and that goes back to perhaps to its Greek antecedents, when the eagle was a symbol of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Jupiter, or Jove, his Roman equivalent. It was always carried as an army standard. The eagle of each legion was a sacred emblem. It was carried basically on a pole at the head of the army, and it was the ultimate disgrace to lose the symbol and soul almost of your legion. And people would fight right to the last degree in order to preserve their eagle. Famously, this happened when Caesar was invading Britain. His eagle carrier, when the troops were not all that keen to get off the boats and fight against the British waiting on the shore, the eagle carrier jumped out of the boat and said, "Right, well, I'm going ahead, and you lads had better follow me to keep the eagle." And indeed, that's what actually saved the day. Eagles were famously lost at different points in Rome's history, especially in 53 BC, when Crassus, at the head of several legions, lost a number of standards and eagles to the Parthians under Mithridates. And Mithridates clearly knew the value of these things because he kept them, and these were used in negotiations with the Romans much later, 30 odd years later, and he exacted a decent price for them when eventually they were returned after negotiations with Augustus in around 20 BC. And that was so important to Augustus that was portrayed in sculpture on the famous Prima Porta statue on the breastplate thereof. So then in mythology almost, we have the story of the Eagle of the Ninth, the famous Rosemary Sutcliffe book, written in, I think, the 1950s, certainly made into 2 films. It was the basis of 2 films in recent times, one called The Eagle, funnily enough, and the other Centurion. But the Eagle was the idea that the Ninth Legion in Britain had somehow got in a battle with the Celtic tribes and had lost its eagle, and later on this was such a disgrace that the Ninth Legion was disbanded. Actually, that's probably not quite true, but it's a great basis for a story, and does represent a single truth about Rome and the eagle, which is that the eagle is fundamental to Rome's idea of itself. In recent times, there was a spectacular archaeological discovery at the bottom of a ditch in the city of London, and one of the best eagles that's ever been found anywhere from the Roman Empire, carved in Cotswold stone, showed a Roman imperial eagle with a snake in its beak, and that was presumably supposed to show the supremacy and the authority of Rome. And it was quite a size, now in the Museum of London, but showed right in the 1st century how important eagles were in the Romans saying what they wanted to about themselves. There are also stories of eagles being somehow encased in wax images, which were placed on ceremonial funeral pyres, and when the wax melted, like it did in Cambridge Latin Book 2, and an eagle magically flies out, representing the soul of the Emperor Claudius. And there are 2 or 3 examples of that in Roman history supposedly happening. I've always wondered how that would actually work. If you've got a presumably terrified eagle encased in wax, that's going to get quite nervous. It's also not going to go so well if melted wax gets on its wings. Still, that's seems to have been what actually happened. And that idea of the eagle as the soul of an emperor is also to be seen on the underneath of the Arch of Titus in Rome. The Arch of Titus was built to celebrate the achievements of Titus, the Roman general and later emperor, in capturing Jerusalem. And there's all the treasures from the Temple of Jerusalem shown on some of the sculpture, but also on there is the deification of the emperor. And it shows an eagle arising out of the figure of Titus. So clearly the Romans understood the eagle to be a symbol of the soul of the emperor, perhaps indeed the soul of the empire itself. What's this got to do with the modern day? Well, there's quite a lot of flags which have the eagle as part of them. The German flag, it was a particular sort of icon was devised by the Nazis, but the eagle has a much longer history than that. It's part of the Polish flag. It goes back to a story about a Polish emperor or king seeing an eagle surrounded by sunlight, and that was incorporated into the Polish flag. It was also for many years the symbol of the Holy Roman Empire, which ruled a large part of Western Europe for a very long time. Why do they bother doing all this? Well, partly they want to associate themselves with the idea of Rome and the power of the Roman Empire. Why did Rome want to do it? It's because they wanted it. It was the king of the birds. They wanted that to symbolize power. So our modern countries, which want to associate themselves with the eagle, really they're looking back to Jupiter and Zeus and classical symbols of power.